In the U.S., there are new developments in the Gabby Petito investigation. Her body was found last month in Wyoming. Authorities are still hunting for her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. On Friday, police in Utah released additional body camera video from an altercation involving the couple in August. In the video, taken weeks before she was reported missing, Petito tells the officers about a fight with Laundrie. He remains a person of interest. And there has been some debate about why the case of Gabby Petito is getting so much attention while other similar cases are seemingly ignored. These concerns have been raised in this country too in relation to thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So for more on this topic, I'm joined now by Hira Ali. She's an author and speaker, and she joins us now from London. Thank you so much for being with us, Hira.
Hi, Arki. Thank you for having me over.
So the first question, why does there appear to be this disparity when it comes to the attention paid to missing women cases when it is white or women of color?
So I believe, Arti, there could be a number of reasons, to be honest. First of all, I believe there is an affinity bias or relatability bias, as a result of which a lot of time news correspondents only prefer to cover stories of victims which they can relate to or who look like women in their family or in their circle. There could also be confirmation bias. A lot of time people are looking for stories or searching for angles that can confirm to their opinions of certain communities which they already have. So because of that, I feel that sometimes women of color or Indigenous women, they often do not get that media coverage that they should be getting.
And so in terms of the case of Sabrina Nasha, for example, and just for our viewers, there were two cases that there were similarities drawn between them. That of Sarah Everard, that was in March of 2021, and Sabrina Nasha more recently. Both happened in London, where these were young women who were essentially murdered. And we know one is an ongoing case, and in the other case of Sarah Everard, there has been a conviction. But we know that there are memorials and dedicated coverage towards Sabrina Nasha now. So that's because there had been an outcry online. Her name was trending online. There were demands for her to get the same coverage as Sarah Everard. Did that have an impact, and does that make it genuine?
Yes. Well, to be honest, if she is getting coverage, that's welcomed. I can't really comment on how genuine it is, because the fact that somebody is now getting that attention which she should have in the first place is definitely a positive sign. But yes, it was belated coverage. It wasn't there as people claim that it was already there. It wasn't there. It was only after a couple of days when people raised it on Twitter. There was a hashtag trending, say her name, and it's only after that that media realize that her case should also get that attention.
So what is the solution then to this issue? And you touched on some of the reasons behind it. In some cases it's relatability, partially of media, partially of the public, partially of what people might see in pop culture and who they feel related to. So what's the solution here? How do we have it more equal across the board when it comes to these horrible tragedies that are occurring?
So, Aarti, I have actually written a book on this with hundreds of strategies on allyship, how to support women and people from marginalized communities. But to sum it up, I would say, I think, when we talk about institution, and I've said this a number of times in the recent articles I've written, especially in the last few weeks, that when we talk about institutional bias or media bias, we're talking about a collective system. And when we talk about a collective system, challenging that becomes excruciatingly difficult. So it's important to start putting responsibility on individuals. So I think every individual needs to have that transparency, have that accountability. It's only then that we'll be able to impact the bigger system. Also the fact that, when news correspondents are covering stories, I think they all should be asking themselves this question. They should first recognize that there is bias. You can't dismiss and say, well, there is no bias, because there is bias. We all are biased. We can't dismiss science. So recognizing this bias and then taking a step back and looking at the stories they're covering, what exactly are they missing? Are there certain communities that they're targeting? Is there confirmation bias? Are there any assumptions they're making on the basis of gender, faith, ethnicity, or socioeconomic backgrounds? So these are the questions. If they start challenging themselves, I think it is going to have a positive impact. And eventually, also the organizations do need to make sure that this is linked to the strategic vision. So whether it's CBC or BBC, everything within that system, recruitment, appraisal, meetings, panels, everything needs to be inclusive. And then only will be people motivated to consider inclusion. Because, what is the compelling factor? There is a huge behavior intention gap usually, right? So how do you close that behavior intention gap? By making sure that you either give them a benefit or they see that, okay, if I don't do it, there's potential loss. So if there is nothing happening, no benefit, no loss, then people will never look into it. So I guess to close the gap, it is also important for organizations to think of it strategically, and also for individuals to challenge their own stereotypes and assumptions.
And very quickly, just a final question for you. Yes, much of the responsibility, as you've mentioned, goes on organizations, but also consumers of news. And we know that they do that on so many different platforms, not just broadcast, not just online. So how should they be viewing things or consuming news in a way that allows them to give the oxygen to everyone in a similar way?
So I think, again, question assumptions, because particularly with South Asian women, Aarti, there is this assumption that if there is a murder, it is probably honor killing. That really impacts the way any case is treated. So looking at coverage and questioning, raising this concern on Twitter, on social media, on Facebook, because social media is free to use. Anybody can raise this concern. Anybody can, talk about it. So the more people talk about it collectively and raise this issue, irrespective of their color, irrespective of their faith, ethnicity, background, the more people will be heard. So I think everybody needs to challenge themselves and see what they're looking at.
We really appreciate your time today on this important topic. Thank you for joining us, Hira.
Thank you for inviting me, Aarti.
That was author and speaker Hira Ali, and she joined us today from London.